So in a little bit of MLB news, I guess it's not really news, but a little bit of a topic of the MLB, because I haven't really done much on it because it's the off season and there's really not much going on. A couple of free agents signed recently in Justin Upton and Cespedes, Yoenis Cespedes, I think that's how you pronounce it. And the reason I bring that up is because they're part of a new rule for semi-new rule. It's called the arbitration or restricted free agency rule, and it hurts a lot of people with that. Not just the player, because, before I get into that, let me explain how this works. So, a player, there's two types of free agents in the MLB. There's unrestricted, who are just normal, they can sign with anyone, no restrictions, nothing like that. And then there's a restricted free agents, which are kind of interesting because the team that signed them, the team that has them, for example, I'm from Colorado, so I'm going to use the Rockies for example. Let's say, he's gone. Carlos Gonzalez is eligible for restricted free agency and a free agent. It happens the same year. And how restricted free agency works is that after a certain amount of years, it kind of comes into effect where they become a free agent, but not quite. And it's called arbitration, and they're kind of a restricted free agent. And how it works is the team that owns them, so sticking with the Cargo and the Rockies thing, so let's say it's the off season next year. Cargo's a free agent. I'm doing air quotes, free agent. And so he's about to become a free agent, like his contract's up. The Rockies can offer him a 1-year deal, basically, and it's the same dollar value. It's like the average salary of everyone in the MLB. I'm not quite sure how that part works of it, but for this year, for example, it was 15.8, and so you can offer it to any of your free agents. It's a 1-year deal for a certain amount of money, and what it basically does is if they can either choose to accept it or reject it. If they accept it, they get that 1-year deal, $15 million. You can negotiate it. It's kind of like offer them a 1-year deal, kind of like the franchise tag in the NFL, but you can use it on more than one person. And so how it works is you offer them that, they can accept it, they get the 1-year deal for I think I said $15.8 million, or they could reject it. And if they reject it, they still have it. They don't have it on the table, but they can negotiate they're basically a restricted free agent is what they turn into. And I think it's only been like 4 people have ever accepted it, and they all happened this year because it's like what it is. Okay, so how MLB teams use it is they attach it to their obviously really good players. So like Zach Greinke got it this year, and a bunch of other people got it. But that's the main way they use it. Well, kind of. That was the purpose of it, is you give it to the really good guys that are worth more, but they can sign it for that 1 year, get more the next year, or they can get some compensation, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But how they also use it is they give it to the lower level, I guess, free agents, and they give it to those lower levels that are. It's 15 million, so it's a lot of money, but they're like, let's say that these teams think that they're worth 8 million, but they know that the player thinks they're worth more than 15 million. So the player can just reject it. And then, so when it's rejected, a player is free to sign with anyone, like I said. But what it turns into is that whatever team that player signs with has to give their first round pick to the other team. And how it's not really like a straight up trade kind of thing, but what it does is they lose theirs, and then that team that had him in the first place, so like the Rockies, gain a compensatory pick at the end of the first round. And so let's say Carlos Gonzalez gets signed by the Cubs, for example, just to throw a team out there, not saying anything. But so let's say stepping back just a minute, Gonzalez was a Rocky, got offered the restricted free agent qualifying offer, and then he proceeded to say, "No, I don't want that." So he turned down a year and $15 million on the table. Said, "No, I'm good. I'm good, Colorado. I'm gonna go look." Looks around for a little bit, and then talks to the Cubs and it's like, "Hey." The Cubs say, "Hey, we want you." Cargo's like, "Hey, I'll take some money." So they just throw down a deal of 5-year. I guess that's 180 million or 150 million for $30 million a year basically. I'll just say that. So the Cubs say, "Okay, we'll give you $30 million a year for 5 years. Here you go." Cargo signs that, and so he becomes a Cub. The Cubs have a first-round pick. Not anymore. They did. So they lost it because they signed Carlos Gonzalez, and the Rockies gained a compensatory pick. And, I mean, the Cubs will never do that. It's just the first team that came to my mind because I was looking around, I saw something blue, and I thought Cubs immediately. But, anyways, so the Cubs lose their pick, and the Rockies gain an extra pick. And how that kind of ties into is that's the best way for people to do that, is to sign or offer it to their higher-end players, like Cargo and Greinke and all that. But what teams have started to do, because this only started 2 years ago, so 2013 I believe was the first year, maybe it was 14 that it started. But what teams have started to do is say, for example, I'll use the example from last year, Stephen Drew. I don't remember what team he was on. I believe he was on the Diamondbacks, but he was offered the qualifying offer, said no, and then was later. So he said no. He was looking for offers and all that. No one really wanted to sign him because of the first-round draft pick that they had to give away. And then later, I think it was like in May or June, and he finally signed with the Red Sox, but to something he really didn't want to. And he was just kind of stuck in no man's land from January to June because of the draft pick. And kind of where I was going with this is, who does this really... Well, obviously it's a new thing. The qualifying offer thing is completely new and all that. And I'm not really going to say it's bad or good. And, I mean, with the 4 people finally accepting it this year, it's obviously not a terrible thing because those players are getting paid, and it might start making teams rethink who they give it to. It might start taking players who won't usually get that money in free agency, say, "Hey, I'll take 15 mil for a year, here you go," and sign it. But so that's kind of a good thing about it. But it makes, like I said, it makes people think, and makes the teams think, and the players think, and all that. But who does it really hurt? A lot of people will say, "Oh, it hurts the teams." First off, and it does. You got the team that signs it, or signs the player losing a draft pick, and a lot of these teams built through the draft now instead of trying to sign free agents like that. And obviously it does hurt teams. But there's also, it hurts the other team as well because they're losing their star player. Now obviously if it's like another guy that's not really their star, like their Cargo or their I can't think of it, like Greinke, that's who his name I blanked on. But if it's not like their Greinke or Cargo, they're not really losing a lot. If they don't really mean anything to the team, they're just trying to get a draft pick. And that's kind of where it starts to hurt the player a little bit, is because say you have a guy who's, I'll use MLB The Show's rankings for example, or like video game rankings. So Cargo and Greinke are usually in the 90s, so they're really good. Obviously that 90 to 100, 90 to 99 is really good. Say you got a guy that's like a 73, 74, 75, just a straight up average player on the game, and say they translate that to real life, so he's technically like an average player, so he's a 75 overall, and you're like, "Oh, I don't like, he's useful, I'd like to keep him on the team, but it's not necessary, so I'm going to give him this offer and maybe I can get a draft pick back." So that player who's not really worth the 15 mil says, well, the player says, "No, I'm going to decline it," but he doesn't really, because he thinks he's worth a little bit more than the 15, the amount of money, so I'll just leave it at that. And so he says, "Yeah, I can probably get a little bit more than that." And he goes and searches for offers, and the teams really start shying away from him at the beginning. He's like, oh, it's just the beginning. And we get a little bit toward January, he's starting to get worried and not really signed yet, so he's getting a little bit worried. Just because when you sign him, you have to give up your draft pick, and a lot of teams don't want to do that. And then you get to February, same thing, gets a little more worried. March, April, still doesn't have a contract, has an offer, but would be a minor league player or something like that. He doesn't really want to go to that team. So we're going to call it late April, early May, he finally says, I'll accept any offer, and the teams are like, we don't really care because we have the players we want. And this guy basically turns into an injury signee. So let's say he's a shortstop and someone breaks their leg and is out for the year, tears ACL or whatever. They can sign him to a 1-year deal and give up that pick just to have the immediate stuff. And it basically what I'm getting around to is that it hurts not just the teams, but it also hurts the players because they're having to give up a lot of their, like, they're not going to be on a team. They don't know if they'll ever play in the MLB again, or at least that year, because they'll have that whole October now till May off, and not really under anyone's contract, not under anyone's workout guidelines. They're doing their own thing, kind of stuff, and they don't know if they're going to lose their sharpness or edge or whatever. So I think that qualifying offer is a bad thing. It's got good parts, got good ideas, but it's a bad thing in general just because of how bad it kind of affects the all the players in the league and the teams as well. So it just hurts the growth of teams, and it keeps the rich getting richer if they start signing players like that, where they can just be like, hey, you want to come play for us for $300 million? And then a couple years later, they're like, we don't really want you anymore. You're not that good. Here's a qualifying offer. Oh, you're rejecting it. Sweet. And they just take draft picks from other guys. And that's kind of where the parity of it comes in, is that there isn't really any with that. So I guess we'll see if MLB ever tries to change it or adapt it or whatever. So, but I guess that's really about it. Thanks for listening to the Ryno Sports Talk Podcast. I really enjoyed this one just because of the players athletes becoming soft, and is the NBA rigged one. I know I didn't really expand on it kind of how I wanted to, but I guess it's still, I don't really know what to think about it. I know it's not rigged, but this is kind of an interesting topic because it's controversial enough, but I tried my best at that one, and I didn't really want to go too controversial with it. And yeah, so thanks again for listening to the Ryno Sports Talk Podcast, the episode 7 this week, and I will have a Super Bowl, I guess, preview coming up sometime this week, either Wednesday or Thursday. So don't forget to watch the Pro Bowl because it's so much cool. It's really going to be super boring unless they do what I said. So if you haven't read that one, link in the description. I thought it was a really good piece. So yeah, thanks again for listening. If you like this, hit like, subscribe if you are new, and like sports talk, and leave a comment about what you should talk about next. So see you later.